First off, if you're looking for advice on how to choose your faction or like an overview of all the factions in BattleTech, and this is not the video for that, I've linked a couple in the description down below. Anyway, if you're like me and you came to BattleTech after playing a lot of Games Workshop games, you might be a little bit surprised when you're asking about factions and stuff and people tell you just get the mechs you want and put them on the table. Because that can be a little bit confusing. What do you mean I can just play whatever I want to? In my opinion, that's one of the cooler parts about BattleTech, is the fact that it's very free for all. It's very a la carte. You can basically put anything on the table, and in most cases, it will be sort of like lore accurate, or you can sort of explain away why you're fielding these particular mechs, and that's very, very cool. And maybe you're like a veteran BattleTech player and very big into the lore, and you're saying, no, you can't just put anything on the table. You know what I mean. You can basically put anything on the table. It's unlikely that you're gonna have like a pristine Mackie from the 2400s in your Clan game, but it's possible. Maybe you're not gonna have the Wyvern City prototype thing or whatever, but you know, it still has a record sheet. You could put it on the table if you wanted to. You know, it's very open-ended, and that's a great part about BattleTech, in my opinion, especially for new people, because then they can get the mechs they like the looks of and then kind of dive into the game through the stuff they like. And again, if you're at all like me and you're sort of new to BattleTech and you've mainly or mostly or only been like putting together mercenary bands that have just, you know, the mechs you want to field and stuff, I have a suggestion for you, which is try to find a faction. I have a couple of reasons for it, a lore sort of perspective, and a hobby perspective, and also a gameplay perspective. First, I would just like to tell you about the factions I've chosen recently. As mentioned, I've mostly been just collecting like random mercenary outfits where anything goes, really. I've mostly wanted to use mechs that are available very early on so I can play those succession war games and whatever. But you know, I've just bought the mechs I wanted to wield and put them in colors I've wanted to do. But sometime ago, this year, I was given a Coyote from the Proliferation Era pack from a friend of mine who didn't want that particular mech. And that's when I started thinking, oh, well, now I have the Coyote, so maybe I have to start collecting clans, I guess. And that sort of brought me to thinking about which clan would I want to make. For some reason, something about the clans in the lore just made me think I can't just have clan mechs in like a random mercenary group. I wanted to find a clan that I would sort of vibe with and wanted to play as. And after a lot of like looking at color schemes and reading about the factions and what kind of tactics and mechs and units and that sort of thing they use, I ended up choosing Hell's Horses. It really has to do with the fact that I do want to play BattleTech as a combined arms game, and Hell's Horses are the clan that uses everything. Like, I wanted to have tanks, and I wanted to have protomechs and infantry and battle armor, all kinds of stuff. And Hell's Horses seemed like the obvious sort of clan to pick for that sort of thing. Also, I thought the philosophy of theirs is sort of like, you know, they are sort of practical when it comes to tactics and stuff. And, you know, they seem fairly sort of level-headed. Also, they're sort of involved in every era in some way or the other. So I felt they felt pretty good to me. I also found this pretty alright color scheme that vibed with me, this gray, black, and metal sort of thing. This is the Hell's Horses Beta Galaxy. So that's what I wanted to pick, the Hell's Horses. Now you can also see this is my newest thing. I've also started a Corrida force, a Draconis Combine force, and this is entirely based on the fact that I love these particular mechs and I wanted an excuse to field as many Panthers and Generals as possible. Well, It's probably not going to be more than 2 or 3 maybe, but basically I love the Panther. It's one of my favorite mechs, and I love the Jenner, also one of my favorites. Also, I really do like PPCs as a weapon, and Draconis Combine really likes its variants that have a lot of PPCs. For example, the Catapult. Normally a missile boat, but the Draconis Combine version has 2 PPCs. So that sort of vibe with me as well. So those are my reasons for picking those particular factions recently. Now, as for why I really suggest new players who haven't yet really done that to pick a faction or maybe 2, like I did, what are the positives of picking a faction? And like I said before, I would like to present 3 different reasons for this. The first one being lore. I'm still not hugely into the lore of BattleTech. I'm still waiting for the universe book. I'm still waiting for the Graded trilogy. And, I'm not going to read that many books. I don't intend to do that, but I do want to read a little bit more. But choosing a faction that you like the sound of, you like the look of, you like the mechs, you like the tanks, you like, the general attitude, does give you a way to dive into the lore from a very particular perspective. Like, for example, when I chose Hell's Horses as my clan faction a couple of months ago, I really started to dig into the lore because I wanted to know what these guys are all about, Why are the Hell's Horses like they are? Why are they always coming up with wacky new stuff like the Quad Vs, and why do they still use the Protomechs, and how are they doing in different parts of the timeline? So that's sort of how I started getting more into the lore through my faction. Now, maybe Hell's Horses aren't the best faction for that, because I don't think they have like many books where they're the main focus of stuff, but it still gave me a sort of a narrower window into the lore, which is, BattleTech lore is huge. There are so many books, there are so many factions and eras and everything, but choosing this faction gave me this little window into a particular part of it to get to grips with the setting in a more tangible way. Same thing with Draconis Combine. Ever since I chose Kurita to be my new company, I've read a little bit more about how they've operated during the years and what's happened to them, what are the big worlds and stuff, and how they operate on the battlefield. So it's been very interesting. So choosing a faction gives you this nice window into looking at the BattleTech universe from a more contained perspective. So that's reason number 1 I recommend choosing a faction eventually. Now, the second reason is a hobby reason. Because, again, BattleTech is a very open-ended game. You can just buy whatever mechs you like and put it on the table, and that's great. But it can be a little bit intimidating, If you see a lot of cool mechs, you want to buy all of them, you might have a bit of a block there. You're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to buy. I don't know why I would be buying this instead of that. Choosing a faction, of course, will sort of narrow down your choices, because now you're gonna go to master unit list and check out which sort of mechs are available to this faction, or maybe you'll find the little articles on like categories on Sarna that have like information on which units this particular faction created and stuff. And now you want to look into those, and maybe you'll find a sort of a new direction for your hobby. For example, again, I chose Hell's Horses for a few reasons, but the basic reason was I wanted to get into the clans. So now I have a very good reason to buy, maybe trade mechs, clan mechs, And choosing Kurita now enables me to take a harder look at the Kurita only or produced mechs, like, of course, my favorites, Panther and Jenner, but also stuff I don't like. For example, the Dragon. I don't like how the Dragon looks or how it plays, but I need one now because I have to have a Dragon, so I'm going to have to get one, and maybe I'll find something interesting about the Dragon with time. And also, maybe choosing a faction and like a certain regiment of it or something might also make you a better painter, because now you're trying to achieve a certain effect, or maybe you're painting things you've never painted before, or colors or whatever, and you're trying new things, and you're becoming a better and more informed painter as well through choosing a faction. So using factions like to direct your hobby, passion and interest is also one of the good points about choosing your new faction. Now, as for the third positive that comes with choosing a faction is a gameplay focused one, and this partly stems from the lore and the hobby parts of choosing a faction. Of course, different factions are going to use like different tactics, they're going to build different mechs, they're going to have different sorts of forces. And in just general gameplay, you can always field pretty much anything. Let's say you could have like a very light Lyran lance of just light mechs, but they're probably going to be heavier mechs in the lore. They're going to wield like heavier mechs. Or in the case of Corrida, which I chose, I think it's very interesting that Corrida doesn't really use a lot of medium mechs. So now I want to build a force that operates in a different way to my mercenary outfits, because this force is mostly going to be lights and heavies, and it's going to play differently, and I'm going to have different kinds of mechs that I wouldn't otherwise buy, and it's going to give me a new perspective on the gameplay. I'm going to be using different tactics, different mechs, different weapon systems maybe I'll have to learn new stuff. So choosing a faction, or at least building like a force based on the preferences of a faction, is going to give you a different perspective on the gameplay, which I think is very interesting as well. So there are my thoughts on why you should actually eventually choose a faction in BattleTech, even if you're not like required to do so. Again, it's totally fine to play just about anything in BattleTech, and that's wonderful about it. But maybe, just maybe, choosing something is going to open up your hobby and your interest in BattleTech in a new sort of way. Anyway, that's pretty much the video for this time. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.